Look, I haven't seen this yet. We got a new Lego video, and yeah, I do hope someone is collecting these all in one place. We're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about the ceasefire, which is like the situation with the ceasefire is nuts. We're going to get into that.
Hey, Orange Pig, America first? Oops. Oh boy, that was the slogan you stole. But Bibi's pulling strings and your vote is getting cold. We're not just fighting for Iran, hear this clear. Your people reached out to us. Yeah, we got the DMs here. If one nation's gonna stand against the Epstein regime's fear, it's us till the last breath. We've been doing it for years. We're standing here for everyone. Your system ever wrong, they've known all along. The enemy was always you. The real threat wore a suit and sung a patriotic song while selling their own citizens and calling it strong. Stealing from your own people, making them bleed, taking tax dollars just to fund your own greed. They waking up to the lies, the illusions of burst. You screamed America first, now you put losers first. Make Israel great again. Your government is run by pedophiles. They ordered you to die for Israel. They ordered you to die for Israel. They lied to you all. We saw everything. If the public ever saw the files, man, the planet would shake from the level of filth and the crimes in your wake. No wonder Jeff called you the worst, you degenerate snake. You claimed you never set foot. You went 40 plus times. You sick bastard, you cooked. We stepping up to the plate. Epstein regime gotta fall. You fake Christian elite sacrificing the ball. Demon, you talk real big for a man with tiny hands. Tiny hands, tiny things, tiny everything. We saw everything, and word got out. The smallness kinda expands. No wonder all those rage tweets, all those desperate rants. Overcompensating bully, always causing the scene. You said you love losers. Well, look at your team. Government is run by. Your government is run by pedophiles. They ordered you to die for Israel. They ordered you to die for Israel. They lied to you all.
God damn. You know, you could never make me hate them. Iran. Really. And people like still, with everything going on, there's still people like in these Western countries saying like, I don't support Iran. I support the Iranian people. What I saw in the lead up to this deadline that Trump was imposing was Iranian people coming together to form human chains on infrastructure and bridges and around these power plants. You know, we've seen a people come together and take on the greatest empire in the world and the largest and most technologically advanced military in the world. And the people came together in Iran to defeat that. But this whole thing of they're sending you to die for Israel, the line in that song that we just listened to, this is the real test right now, you know, and everything that is happening with this ceasefire and this 10-point plan is nuts. It is absolutely nuts. Like, how do you negotiate with this country when they lie about the most blatantly obvious things? When Trump says we've accepted this 10-point plan as a framework for negotiations, and everyone says, okay, here's what the 10-point plan says. They're going to control the strait, sanctions relief, no more attacks on Lebanon, and all these points. And then they're literally out there saying like, no, we didn't mean that 10-point plan. We were talking about something else. It's so brazen the way that they lie about the most obvious, like easily disprovable things. It's so sick. I support the Iranian people and want what's best for them, and that means Iran stays intact and doesn't become a failed state, balkanized, a puppet regime, which means we have to support the ones keeping Iran functioning again. If you think Iran's going to fight back against the American empire and Israel when it's a Pavlovist monarchy restoration puppet state, that's the complete end of any organized resistance towards Zionism or American imperialism in the Middle East. That's just why I don't understand like any of the people that have been like, oh, I support Palestine, I'm against Israel, I'm anti-Zionist, and I'm against the corrupt authoritarian Iranian regime, and I'm against Hezbollah, and I'm against Hamas, and I'm against Ansar Allah, and every single group that's actually out there doing the fighting against Israel and against the United States. That to me is just like a completely nonsensical, incoherent position to hold. And like feel like it's slowly becoming less and less relevant. This was, I think, the dominant strain of thought on this in like kind of professional leftist or academic circles in Western countries. And I feel like it's at least being diluted, but I'm tired of it. You know, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It's like, it's so weird to me to live in a Western country and be like, I'm leftist, I'm anti-imperialist, I don't support my government, and all the terrible things that the United States government do or its allies like Canada and the UK and France and Germany, whoever else. I'm against it. Death to America. I don't support it. And then we're out there like purity testing any of the people doing the actual fighting against these groups. And we literally people sitting here in Western countries under the umbrella of protection that you get from living in one of these countries, benefiting from all the violence, benefiting from the imperialism. And we're purity testing the people actually out there on the front lines doing the fighting against what we acknowledge is like this corrupt, violent regime led by pedophiles. And we sit there and purity test the people that are doing the fighting. It's nuts to me. No one wants to actually pick up a rifle in the West and do anything about our governments. No one actually wants to do that. No one wants to build the barricades. No one wants to put their life on the line or their freedom on the line. And then the people that are doing that in Yemen, in Gaza, in Lebanon, the people that are actually doing that, we go, ooh, tut, tut, tut. Oh, actually, they don't pass my purity test as a very serious Western intellectual leftist person. I'm just tired of this mentality, man. Like, really. I support all resistance movements except the one that needs support right at this very moment. We expect these people or these nations to be perfect. And they have to be perfect in order to like meet the kind of moral justification that we have for resistance. Like, it doesn't matter what you think about the Iranian state or its human rights violations or whatever else. Not even just from a whataboutism perspective, because yes, we have far worse human rights problems in our own countries and our own allies. But just on the level of like, we can't do anything about that right now. Like, we need to focus on ending empire. We need to focus on defeating imperialism. Then maybe we can talk about human rights with another country that is engaging in ways that we don't agree with. Maybe we can actually have a productive conversation about that then. When these countries are under threat, though, in the way that they are, when they've got guns and missiles being pointed at them like they do, when they've got Israel and the United States funding protest movements and arming violent rioters and protesters in order to provoke a reaction, that's not the time to be having this like moral litmus test for these places. Got to do it the right way. Hundreds of years of oppression before a non-violent movement gains enough to support within the oppressive legislative body to pass a bill that maybe gives you some rights. Yeah, and then the non-violent leaders are assassinated. But like, how do you negotiate with these people when the entire world knows what this 10-point plan is? And now they're just blatantly saying that it's a different one. They make these big blustering threats. They go right to the brink of this deadline that they've set. Then they agree to negotiations. They agree in writing that this 10-point plan can be a framework. And then they say this right after.
So let me be clear and correct the record. The Iranians originally put forward a 10-point plan that was fundamentally unserious, unacceptable, and completely discarded. It was literally thrown in the garbage by President Trump and his negotiating team. Many outlets in this room have falsely reported on that plan as being acceptable to the United States, and that is false. With the president's deadline fast approaching and the United States military completely decimating Iran with each passing hour, the regime acknowledged reality to the negotiating team. They put forward a more reasonable and entirely different and condensed plan to the president and his team. President Trump and the team determined the new modified plan was a workable basis on which to negotiate and to align it with our own 15-point proposal. The president's red lines.
They sent us a secret 10-point plan that was different than the one that everyone has seen. No, the one that everyone saw that is good for them and bad for us. No, that's not the real one. They actually sent us a different one where they caved and they gave in to all our demands. We can't show it to you. Unfortunately, we cannot show you the secret plan at this time where they completely caved and they gave in to all these threats that we were making. It's insane. Like, it really is. Like, it's so brazen. It's so stupid, man.
The president's red lines, namely the end of Iranian enrichment in Iran, have not changed. And the idea that President Trump would ever accept an Iranian wish list as a deal is completely absurd. The president will only make a deal that serves in the best interests of the United States of America, and he as a negotiating team will focus on this effort over the next 2 weeks, so long as the Strait of Hormuz remains open with no limitations or delays. These extraordinarily sensitive and complex negotiations will take place behind closed doors over the course of the next 2 weeks. I would strongly advise the media against running with narratives that have no basis in.
It's just unbelievable how brazen it is, man. They're such liars. How do you deal with that? How do you negotiate with people? Like, say what you want about Iran. Whatever you say. They're serious people, though. How are you supposed to negotiate with this? Even when I agree to a deal, I'm actually still just negotiating. To be totally fair to Trump, he even said we're taking that 10-point deal. He didn't say that we're accepting every single point. He said we're going to use that as basis for a negotiation. And then everyone pointed out what was in this 10-point deal and said, like, this is a huge, historic, humiliating defeat for America. Now they're saying, like, no, actually, it's a different plan. It was actually a totally different plan where they gave in to all our demands. And you just haven't seen it. And you're actually doing fake news when you say that it's the previous one. It's nuts. Like, it really is. See, here's from Trump's Truth Social. The failing New York Times and fake news CNN each reported a totally fake 10-point plan on the Iran negotiations, which was meant to discredit the people involved in the peace process. All 10 points were made up. Hoax. Evil losers. These people are they're not serious. They're just absolutely not serious. And like, here's the fundamental question right now. Like, because that was the initial hang up too, was about Lebanon. They said, no, Lebanon's not part of this arrangement, despite Iran and everyone else who can read saying, like, no, it says clearly actually that attacks on Lebanon stopping are part of this. And of course, Israel responds by their biggest attacks and their most violent and destructive attacks on Lebanon yet. And then they start twisting and turning, going, actually, no. And that's when they start, changing the terms of this 10-point plan that they're claiming they did not agree to. Ultimately, like, what the question is right now, like, you have Israel instantly attempting to prevent any of this plan from actually taking place. Like, Israel's already attempting to sabotage this deal by specifically doing the thing that original 10-point plan said that they could not do. So this is the question. Is America going to be able to yank the chain on Israel and get them to stop while these negotiations are going on? And it gets into this tail wagging the dog thing. Is Israel just completely out of control? Is Israel determining what's happening in U.S. foreign policy? Or is America just allowing Israel to do whatever they want because it gives them a kind of plausible deniability when these moments come and they say, oh, it's Israel's fault? I think it's option 2, but these events feed into people that believe in option 1. But if this is the case, that they just don't even accept this plan as a framework, then then what's the negotiation? This is just going to continue. I read this as them being in lockstep. Yeah, that's what it does seem like. Yeah. But I think it's going to feed into people that make this claim that it's Israel that's controlling the United States foreign policy. And there's really a concerted effort right now to promote this narrative, like we saw even with the New York Times piece the other day, which explicitly puts it at Netanyahu's feet of doing this big pitch meeting with Trump to sell him on this. And everyone in the administration being against it. Marco Rubio and J.D. Vance and all these guys. If what they're saying is that, oh, we're throwing this 10-point plan in the garbage, then it's like there's no negotiation. As we've talked about repeatedly now, Iran can close the strait at any time. And they were not responding to these unhinged threats. The threats were just what gave Trump the little bit of ability to save face when he was admitting defeat. Let's see what CNN is saying.
What kind of ceasefire negotiation would result in this kind of confusion? Why would the White House allow that to be the case on something such high stakes?
Well, it's not
in
a
a moment
ceasefire.
like
I don't think you can trust the Iranian regime. Now, too, we can't control what the Israelis do, but I do think the administration needs to put some pressure on Prime Minister Netanyahu to don't get in the way of what the United States is trying to do here. We certainly want to support Israel. I think that's important. But the president wants to open up the strait.
They are getting in the way by doing the thing that they were explicitly said not to do.
There are global economic implications here. And I think at this point it's very clear to me that the White House is trying to do everything they can to bring some type of closure to this. Israel launching those strikes into Lebanon certainly does not help, one. But two, what this also indicates to me, which is rather troubling, the Iranian regime appears to recognize they really can control the Strait of Hormuz, the Strait of Hormuz. And that is problematic. That was never the case in the past. This creates further issues, I think, for the United States of America and many of our allies in that part of the world.
Yeah, how many of these are Republican strategists, these panelists? Maybe we should talk to like an Iranian or a Lebanese person. No. I don't think so. Let's talk to a bunch of Republican strategists about it.
Even if we somehow broker a deal with the regime, can Saudi Arabia, can Kuwait, can others in that part of the world trust the Iranian regime not to close it again when they're unhappy about something?
Yeah,
and that's an unpredictability that I'm not comfortable with.
And
When they're unhappy about something, or when they get bombed when they're in the middle of a negotiation. I think that's kind of a normal thing to be unhappy about, actually.
They want to toll it. It's not just that it's closed. It's bad enough that it's closed, but they want to charge people money.
We can I can look at this for a few minutes, and we can take a look at what CBC is saying about it right after. That's a good idea, actually, to focus on how Canadian media is selling this. I think it'll be similar, definitely. But there's a little bit more space for Trump criticism.
To go through the strait. And President Trump, rather than saying that's completely unacceptable, we need to go back to the pre-war status quo, he says to John Carl, we're thinking of doing it as a joint venture. He's talking about tolling the strait. It's a way of securing it, also securing it from lots of other people. It's a beautiful thing. A joint venture with the IRGC?
No. You know, this is just like when Donald Trump said that he was
And that's the angle. A joint venture with the IRGC, not why would Iran agree to a joint venture with the country that's attacking them, and they close the strait due to their being attacked. And they're framing it as Trump is might make a deal with the evil IRGC. That's how CNN frames that. Not, it's absolutely insane to demand tolls through this strait that you have no control over. Oh my gosh.
And I'd maybe put Trump Tower on the Gaza Strip. Like, that was a way to motivate.
He did also say that, by the way, about Iran today as well.
That was his way to motivating the Arab states to get busy about a Gaza ceasefire plan that they could enforce. This is his way of getting the United Kingdom. You know, Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, is headed to the Gulf region. He is eager to help arrange a plan to keep the strait open once this is over. This is Donald Trump's way of kicking Keir Starmer and EU in the pants and making sure they do that.
What is his way of doing that? I'm not sure I understand. What's the strategy?
His offhanded saying the United States will be in a joint venture for Iran and told it's so preposterous that this is just another way to like. I want to go back to where we were just a second ago with Lebanon and Hezbollah in Lebanon. You have Iran now basically taking full ownership of Hezbollah, basically saying these are our troops. This is our projected force. That is a big change, and it tells you once again why we.
There are troops are our projected force. Not we're gonna not allow Israel to take over southern Lebanon. We actually that's a little thing called having solidarity with people in the region when they're being attacked, rather than what the Lebanese state is doing, which is saying just like, let's just allow this attack to happen and just give our fucking country to Israel. Or what Syria is now saying. The only force in the region that's like, no, we're actually going to support the people that don't want Israel to invade their country while they're committing all these war crimes and dropping bombs on residential neighborhoods in Beirut. And Iran are the only people in the region saying, we're not going to allow that to happen. It's surrounded by all these cowardly Gulf state puppet governments who allow Israel to do whatever the fuck they want. I can't watch this for too much longer.
Iran. And if the Iranians can't get comfortable with the fact that once this is over with, Hezbollah is out of business, then there is going to be no permanent answer here.
Well, I just want to make one quick note on the Lebanon piece, because I think this is important. Israel is fighting Hezbollah, that's what they say. But we have to acknowledge hundreds of civilians
They're
are
bombing
being
residential neighborhoods in Beirut.
And today might have been one of the bloodiest days for civilians so far in this entire conflict. You cannot disentangle that from the military operation in Lebanon.
But getting rid of Hezbollah will be good for the people of Lebanon.
But my point is today.
People of Lebanon will be better off when the people that are fighting the army that's bombing them are gone. Is that about right? The people of Lebanon will be so much better off when there's a country bombing their capital city and there's no one fighting back. Okay, I can't. I'm tapping out. I'm tapping out. It's just unbelievable. What a backwards, upside down version of reality that these people present. These absolute propagandists, state media propagandists. The people of Lebanon they want to get their land stolen. Exactly. They've been lining up to just hand southern Lebanon to the Israelis, and Hezbollah has been cruelly forcing them to continue to stay there. Very sad state of affairs. The videos coming out of Lebanon are insane. They're raining down massive levels of ordnance on residential areas. And yeah, it's like they're responding to this ceasefire deal and taking out their rage of this deal on the civilians. Because like I've been saying, that's the only thing that Israel knows how to do, is drop bombs on civilians, not fight an actual war against actual soldiers. Every time I see an interview with a Lebanese individual in southern Lebanon, they're saying, please, Mr. Trump, let Israel have my home. I don't need it anymore. I can move, please. Crazy, man. Israel wants to be greater Israel. They want southern Lebanon. They want all this territorial expansion. They haven't really been shy about talking about it. And all this thing is back and forth, like, oh, is America going to stop them? Is it working against American interests? I think we just have to assume that it's in American interest for this greater Israeli project, this greater Israel Zionist project to continue. And all these countries that have tried to play nice, that have tried to be compliant states, that have supported the U.S. and supported Israel, should wake the fuck up before like it's them in the crosshairs. Here's the CBC coverage of the ceasefire yesterday.
Tonight, the U.S. and Iran agreed to a 2-week ceasefire at the 11th hour. The deal announced after Donald Trump's extreme threat to wipe out Iranian civilization.
It's very shocking. He's literally talking about a massive war.
Still taking the U.S. perspective there, that it was their threats that caused the deal to happen and not the fact that they were completely not in control of the situation. And it's a totally unwinnable scenario, which, as we know, is the actual reason.
The details of the agreement and the question, can it hold? How the surge in fuel prices could affect your grocery bill.
The fresh stuff is where you're going to see the immediate impact.
Stunning new images of the moon from that historic in the Middle East. The U.S. and Iran have agreed to a 2-week ceasefire contingent on Iran reopening the Strait of Hormuz, pausing, on paper at least, the war that's been raging there for more than a month. The announcement came after a flurry of negotiations as an 8 p.m. deadline set by Donald Trump loomed. Miss it, he threatened Iran, and, quote, a whole civilization will die. The agreement was announced with about 90 minutes to spare. So there's a lot of work still to do to find a permanent end to this war, and a lot of questions, too, about Trump's extreme rhetoric. Katie Simpson is in.
I don't even care if they try to sell it as the U.S. winning and do it for all I care if you get Trump to stop. Yeah, as I was saying, I think there should be more like, congratulations, sir, you did it. Rather than trying to goad him into doing more war, which is what a lot of other people, and like we were saying, liberals and Democrats are doing right now. But any deal, as Iran has made clear, any deal is going to involve stopping attacks on Lebanon, them controlling the strait, and getting security guarantees. I don't think there's any possible version of this where this ceasefire holds without those three things being met.
Washington tonight. So, Katie, this went right down to the wire.
Truly, Adrian, this has been a remarkable 12 hours. Donald Trump went from threatening to wipe out a civilization, an unthinkable thing for an American president to say, to reaching a ceasefire deal that includes reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Iran is framing this as a win and a humiliating climb down for the U.S. At the locations the U.S. president threatened to destroy, Iranian state TV showed large gatherings, human chains at power plants, and on bridges too.
Incredible.
The regime seeming to dare Donald Trump to make good on his ultimatum.
That's not the regime. That's not the regime daring Donald Trump to make good on these threats. That's the people. That's the people of Iran. That's not the regime that we're looking at right now. And we should not be making this distinction.
And in the end, he did not. With less than an hour and a half to spare, Trump announced a deal on social media, calling it a double-sided ceasefire, writing, subject to the complete, immediate, and safe opening of the Strait of Hormuz, I agree to suspend the bombing and attack of Iran for a period of 2 weeks. Mediators in Pakistan brokered the deal, according to Trump. He says the U.S. is willing to work with Iran on the 10-point peace plan it proposed. On social media, Iran confirmed it agreed to the ceasefire. For a period of 2 weeks, safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz will be possible via coordination with Iran's armed forces. Hours before the breakthrough, the fighting raged. Iran fired missiles at Israel and across the Gulf region. Israel says it targeted railroad tracks across Iran. A synagogue in Tehran was destroyed, and the U.S. targeted military sites on Karg Island, where Iran exports 90% of its oil. Even if this ceasefire holds, Trump will face intense scrutiny over this social media threat posted hours before the deadline. A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again, he wrote. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will.
It's very shocking. It really raises questions about his fitness to be our commander-in-chief. He's literally talking about a massive war crime.
Donald Trump right now is acting in an unhinged, dangerous way that threatens the stability of all of civilization.
As calls get louder for Trump to be removed from office, there is widespread condemnation for his words, including from the Pope, the first ever American pontiff.
To remind all that attacks on civilian infrastructure is against international law, but that it is also a sign of hatred, the division, the destruction.
We need an anti-pope.
A human being is capable of.
We're going to do an American anti-pope. Did you hear they're like threatening the Vatican because the Pope is too woke? That's a totally kind of underrated subplot. Everything happening right now.
The backlash is also fairly intense among prominent right-wing influencers, including Candace Owens and Alex Jones. They peddle conspiracies and incredibly offensive material. That's an understatement. But they do have sway with some in that MAGA supporter base. Even they're saying Trump should be removed from office.
And Katie, these peace talks are formally expected to begin on Friday. Katie, that is Katie Simpson in Washington. So let's head next to Sasha Petrusik, who's in Jerusalem tonight. Sasha, what's the reaction been to the ceasefire from the region?
Well, Adrian, if you looked up in the sky, you wouldn't know there was a ceasefire announced tonight. The booms continued, the interceptions continued here in Jerusalem, in Israel, and in various countries in the Gulf who are dealing with missiles and drones even throughout the night. Questions also remain about what will happen in Lebanon. The Pakistani negotiators have said that Lebanon and Hezbollah, they are included in this ceasefire and in the talks. But, Israel is about 30 kilometers into Lebanon with a complicated ground operation. So can that just stop? And will it stop when those two sides are facing each other right up against one another? All night long, there was a lot of anxiety throughout this region, throughout the Gulf in particular. People were told to stay home right up until tomorrow. They are breathing a sigh of relief, but they're also skeptical whether this will hold.
Yeah, understandably. The ceasefire really just a very first step.
And I know, they don't have, at the time that they were doing this, they don't have all the information, but no, it's not going to hold. When they did a press conference, when they said, this 10-point plan that we explicitly stated that we were going to use as a framework for negotiations, we're literally throwing it in the garbage. So no, it's not going to hold. And we just have to hope, and I'm pretty sure we do understand that Iran is going to be ready for that outcome.
In the broader negotiations to end this war, but those are likely to be so tricky.
That's right. Iran just isn't trusting of this entire process. It's not trusting of Israel or the United States.
The devious Iranians are not trusting of this process. Why would they be like that? It's just completely irrational. They're just irrational, America-hating ideologues. Just because the last time they were negotiating, they got bombed and their entire leadership was assassinated. Just for those small little reasons, they don't trust the United States or Israel. Can't believe these villains.
And it wants guarantees. It does not want to
the
see
last
the
few
kind
times.
of situation that's been faced in Gaza. That ceasefire has been on for 6 months now, and yet...
Yeah, and how many, I think over 1,000 Palestinians have been killed since that ceasefire?
That fighting, the airstrikes, those have continued almost daily. Iran doesn't want to be attacked again, and it's trying to figure out how to guarantee that that does not happen. In fact, in its statement, it was released tonight announcing and guaranteeing, accepting this ceasefire. It has said that its finger is still on the trigger. Adrian?
All right, Sasha, thank you. That's Sasha Petrusik in Jerusalem tonight. We're going to talk a little bit more about those negotiations with Janice Stein, the founding director of the Munk School of Global Affairs. Just how real is this ceasefire? That's in about 20 minutes. Now, earlier, Prime Minister Mark Carney was asked about Trump's comment that a whole civilization will die tonight. Here's how he responded.
Canada expects all parties in this conflict, in any conflict, to respect international laws. The rules
Yeah, very
of
forceful.
engagement.
Maybe when our own allies repeatedly have shown that they don't respect international law, maybe we can skip to some kind of a more substantial criticism. When it's become clear that international law no longer exists, which is something that Mark Carney himself seemed to recognize at that speech in Davos, that there is no such thing as international law, and we're still putting out statements like this when America is threatening to end civilizations. Now, excuse me while I welcome a far-right psychopath into the Liberal caucus. That's right.
And that means not targeting, certainly, civilians or civilian infrastructure. And we urge all parties in this war to follow those responsibilities. It's a point we've made publicly and privately.
Asked if he regrets his initial support of the war, Carney said Iran was a threat to peace and a state sponsor of terrorism, and that ending that was desirable. But he added Canada makes a distinction between that and obligations under international law. The war in the Middle East is already pushing fuel prices higher in Canada, but experts warn even with a ceasefire, that same sticker shock could soon show up in the grocery aisles too. As Nish Patel reports, shoppers are being warned to...
Our German chancellor said something equally stupid. He just said that as a negotiation tactic. Well, I guess other world leaders can start saying similar things. And of course, in Germany or Canada, they would just say like, oh, this is simply a blustering threat or a negotiation tactic. Or yeah, saying he's going to end a civilization is a negotiating tactic. But when people in Iran say death to America, that's a serious, specific, explicit threat that we need to take seriously and respond to with sanctions and threats of invasion and bombings and all that kind of stuff.
Prepare for noticeable hikes in the cost of food.
Everything's going up 50 cents to $1 a pound.
The fuel crisis from the Middle East war is driving food prices higher, starting with imported produce and some meat and dairy.
The fresh stuff is where you're going to see the immediate impact.
At Winnipeg grocery store Food Fair owner Munther Zaid says shippers and suppliers are adding fuel surcharges, forcing him to pass those costs on.
This, a couple of weeks ago, we had it on for 75 cents for a 2-pound bag of onions. We just got a shipment in. We had to raise it to $1.
It's becoming more expensive for trucking companies to transport goods, with the price of diesel jumping 40% since the war began.
But Canada has so much resources in oil and gas, so we should just be able to fill up our trucks with that without importing it, right? That's why we need to have this powerful oil and gas industry, right? So when these kinds of situations come up, we can use the fuel that we have in this country to power our homes and to fill our trucks and to make sure these costs aren't going up, right? Right?
That's rippling through the food supply chain to grocers.
We're now at the point where we can't hold off any longer, and what consumers are seeing at the fuel pump is what the grocers are seeing at their back doors.
And shoppers in rural and remote communities will feel the squeeze even more.
We should anticipate that there's going to be an increase in food inflation in the months ahead. We just have to be transparent and honest about that. There's just no magic bullet that can erase that from happening.
So experts say with Canada's growing season around the corner, buying local seasonal produce could provide a buffer for grocery budgets.
As we get into the spring, our fresh fruits and vegetables aren't coming from as far away, and so the freight impact will not be as profound.
After years of soaring food bills, shoppers are preparing for yet another financial hit.
The same people who think it's genocidal for Russian TV to show the impact of nukes on London now say threatening to destroy an entire civilization is just negotiating. Yeah, I mean, I guess we shouldn't be surprised at the discrepancy anymore, but it's just like, it's so preposterous. The vast difference between the way we cover official enemy states versus America and our own allies, even when we've been under threat ourselves from America, which no one in this country seemed to really enjoy all that much. We still do this shit. We still talk about it in this way.
I am a little more cautious of what I'm buying.
Well, I'm going to double down on my meal planning and prepping, so just making sure that I'm using everything I buy.
After the announcement of a 2-week ceasefire, oil prices fell 15%. But until energy markets stabilize long-term, consumers and the economy will pay the price. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
We need to get on the food, Professor. That's the CBC version, and you can see how like a lot of the same manipulating the discourse and manufacturing consent is present. Maybe the volume is turned down a little bit than what you might see on Fox News or CNN, but like it's all there. The discrepancy between how we talk about different countries, automatically centering, I think, the American perspective, automatically treating the Iran perspective as if they're like dangerous and inherently untrustworthy. It's so crazy to say we're taking this 10-point plan. Be like, no, we weren't talking about that one. Lebanon doesn't count. Lebanon doesn't count as part of the points. And then just being like, actually, we just threw the whole thing in the garbage. The strait's going to just get closed again, and the entire global economy is going to continue to get fucked. This is what we were saying yesterday. It's like they need a way out. They need a way out. And I'm just wondering if they're like, are they going to try and meet Iran's demands, but then try and spin it as if they haven't done that? I don't know how they're going to pull that off. It really is like dealing with a child. No, it's crazy. No, I didn't say that. Just like lying. That's how brazen it is. Like lying, like when you're on camera and you're writing things and everyone can see the things that you're writing and we're all talking about these things, then blatantly lying about it. It's so nuts to me. And like, look at this shit. Look at this. European leaders have likewise pleaded for Lebanon to be included in the limited ceasefire. Netanyahu has shown no public indication he's prepared to scale back the strikes, though on Thursday he said his government will seek direct negotiations with Lebanon. And then he says on Wednesday, I insisted that the temporary ceasefire with Iran not include Hezbollah, and we continued to strike them forcefully. That the deep friendship between Israel's government and Trump was changing the face of the Middle East. So Iran proposes the 10-point plan. The United States says, we'll take your 10-point plan as the basis for negotiations and we can have a 2-week ceasefire. And then Netanyahu just says, I insist that the ceasefire deal does not include Hezbollah. And then America's like, what, 10-point plan? We actually threw it in the garbage because of how bad it was. Again, it's like you see these two entities as part of the same entity, right? But this absolutely feeds into all these ideas about Israel and its control over United States foreign policy. Netanyahu just insists that the ceasefire deal doesn't include Lebanon and then just continues striking Lebanon worse than even before. You will never catch me doing any of this like doomerism stuff or criticizing Iran, the one nation who have heroically stood up to America and Israel and have not backed down regardless of like the level of threat that they've been under. And that 10-point framework that Trump admitted that they were looking at as a basis for negotiations included security guarantees, included sanctions relief, and included cessation of attacks on Lebanon. So I'm not going to sit there and criticize Iran for like going through with this pause when that's being considered, despite knowing full well how untrustworthy the people are that are doing this and how that already almost seems to be like a non-starter. But that's why they're considering it, is because they're actually getting security guarantees. Yeah, and I think the China aspect is important because China knows it's not in anyone's best interest for the entire global economy to collapse. I'm one of the people who think that, yes, there's a shift in posture by Iran. I'm not saying they were defeated, and I also think China did its part, but I'm also not in danger of getting nuked, so who am I to judge them for it? I just don't see it as a shift in posture when the 10-point plan that they submitted that America said, okay, we're going to look at this plan and use that as a basis, is like a wish list of all the things that they could possibly ever want. Like, I don't think that's really a change in stance. They said, we'll stop the war when these conditions are met. And then America says, okay, we'll take a look at this list and then we can use that as a basis for negotiations. So they've agreed. And now they're backtracking on all these claims about this 10-point plan. But I don't see that as being a change in posture. And they're certainly aware of how duplicitous these people are that they're dealing with. Certainly they're aware of this. The last few things that I wanted to look at, one is this tweet from Aragchi, which we can look at here, which is tying this to Netanyahu's criminal trial, which is still ongoing. Aragchi says, Netanyahu's criminal trial resumes on Sunday. A region-wide ceasefire, including in Lebanon, would hasten his jailing. If the U.S. wishes to crater its economy by letting Netanyahu kill diplomacy, that would ultimately be its choice. We think that would be dumb, but we are prepared for it. So that's what he's saying. This is This is from the Iran embassy. They're saying they are going to Islamabad. Last night, Iran was on the verge of responding to the ceasefire violation. Pakistan conveyed messages that the U.S. would stop Israel. So there are representatives going to Islamabad to negotiate. Who knows? Are they going to stop Israel? Somehow I doubt it. And then Elon Mizra says, I think there's a very good chance Araghchi and Ghalibaf will be assassinated in Islamabad. And like, that's pure speculation, but just like, I can't even imagine. I mean, I can imagine it. I can imagine that they're going to assassinate the negotiators. I can imagine it because they've been doing that repeatedly for multiple years now. But like, I can't actually wrap my mind around the implications of what that would be. Like, I just can't. And then like, if that is the case, then this war is just going to continue indefinitely and the entire global economy is going to get blown up. It's going to be a miracle if any of us get out of this without the global economy being built up. And part of the only way that that's going to happen is if the United States recognizes correctly now that there's no way out of this except to leave with a little bit of dignity. Or you can leave in 10 years, have the same result with much more drastic consequences. It doesn't mean the end of capitalism. It's just going to be, they're going to funnel more money up to the very top as usual and let everyone else take the fall for it.